Good afternoon. My name is Emmett Gill, and I am an assistant professor at Rutgers, State University of New Jersey, and I'm also the executive director for the Center for Research on Sport and Society. And today, I'd like to talk to you about student athletes and marijuana use, the blunt truth. The information that I'm going to provide today is based on 93 national media accounts. One student athlete fails non-drug tests. Another student athlete fails 8 drug tests. And yet another student athlete admits to selling marijuana to not only other student athletes in the athletic department, but also other students on campus. Another student athlete admits that he used marijuana to bribe a cab driver. And yet another student athlete reveals that his athletic department ignored failed drug tests of student athletes. Is marijuana use in college athletics a problem? Well, if we look beyond student athlete use and look into issues of distribution and trafficking, one might think that a problem is emerging. For example, at one university, a student athlete was caught with 15 pounds of marijuana. At one ACC school, a student athlete had 17 pounds of marijuana mailed to their room. And at one Big 12 school, 2 student athletes were caught with large quantities of marijuana. One, 95 pounds, and another, 100 pounds. So we've learned that not only are student athletes using marijuana, but it's not hard to get marijuana from fellow student athletes on campus. But what is equally as concerning when we talk about student athletes and marijuana use is what I call the ethology that surrounds student athlete marijuana use. First of all, of the 93 media accounts that were used for this presentation, 92 of the media accounts came to light because of some intervention from the criminal justice system, campus police system, or drug enforcement agencies. Secondly, when we're talking about marijuana use and abuse, we also have to be concerned with other drugs. For example, at one Colonial Athletic Association school, student athletes robbed another student of marijuana, cocaine, and steroids. And like the abuse of other drugs, once that cycle starts, we also have to be concerned with interpersonal issues. For example, at one school, a student athlete admitted that they were abusing marijuana and that their marijuana abuse was related to an incident of domestic violence. If it's not domestic violence, then we have to be concerned about the reality that some of our student athletes may actually place pictures of their drug use on social networking sites such as Facebook and MySpace. So when we think about student athletes and marijuana use and abuse, we have to be concerned about abuse on an individual level. We have to be concerned about distribution and trafficking. But we also have to be concerned about some of the ancillary events that surround marijuana use and abuse. I think one student athlete who competed in the Big Ten put it best when he said, "Drug use destroyed our team." When we think about marijuana use and abuse, we naturally have to ask, how are athletic departments responding to this situation? Well, at one Pac-10 school, the AD makes the decision after a student athlete has tested positive for marijuana as to whether or not the student athlete will be suspended. And the athletic director actually uses the coach's recommendation. At one SEC school, they have a not 3-strike you're out policy, but a 4-strike you're out policy. And if a student athlete does reach that 4th strike, they still do not permanently lose their athletic scholarship. At one ACC school, if a student athlete tests positive the first time, they're suspended for 10% of their games. The second time, 1/3 of their games. And if they test positive a third time, then they're suspended for 1 year. But I think one ACC school understands the gravity of the situation. because if a student athlete tests positive the first time, they're suspended for the season. But if they test positive the second time, it results in the permanent loss of their athletic scholarship. Out of the 21 schools where policies were found online regarding street drug use, only one school mentioned parent involvement as a part of their intervention. When we think about intervention, we also have to ask, what is the NCAA doing? Well, we know that there's random drug testing. We also know that there's testing in terms of championships in a given sport, as well as the college bowl season. But for the most part, the majority of NCAA Division I student athletes can go 4 years and never be tested for a street drug, although a lot of them assume that they'll be tested during their sojourn at the university. To take you back to the student athlete misuse portion of the presentation, I think it's very important to understand that marijuana use and abuse impacts student athletes on as well as off the field. When we think about on the field, it's very difficult for a player to concentrate and to remember plays and to play with confidence if they're under the influence of marijuana. So it affects your win-loss record. On the other hand, in the classroom, it's difficult for a student athlete to concentrate, take notes, remember pertinent information, which ultimately, as one school put it, will impact your APR rates. So athletic administrators, both on the academic side as well as the athletic side, need to pay attention to whether or not marijuana use and abuse is an issue in your athletic department. But I think at the end of the day, we need to decide to have safe conversations about the issue of marijuana use and abuse on our college campuses. Oftentimes there's a conflict between the priorities of the athletic department and student athlete well-being. So as student athletes, athletic administrators, coaches, faculty, advisors, we all need to carve out time to have a safe space for safe conversations about student athlete marijuana use. We have to understand it in the political context. We have to understand it in a Generation X context. We have to understand it within the larger culture of the university. And when we do have those safe conversations, I think that it's imperative that we begin to discuss whether or not our goal is prevention or intervention, whether it's treatment, whether it's harm reduction versus abstinence. Marijuana is illegal. Many schools have a policy against marijuana. But for us to even think that without the appropriate supports and opportunities, that a student athlete is going to be abstaining from marijuana use when it's been a part of their culture and a part of their life would be naive on our part. So we have to find a space, A, for safe conversations, and B, we have to really consider whether or not our goal is harm reduction versus abstinence. But one thing is certain: marijuana use and abuse on college campuses and within athletic departments is a growing problem, and we need to address it. Not just so we can obtain the goals of our athletic department or our given team, but more important, it's important that we do not have athletes who exhaust their athletic eligibility, graduate or not from school, and then leave our institutions with a marijuana abuse problem. Ethically, we have a responsibility to them, and equally as important, we have a responsibility to our parents. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Emmett Gill. I am an assistant professor at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and the director for the Center for Research on Sport and Society. I can be reached at emmettg@ssw.rutgers.edu. Thank you for your time, and have an Obama day.